Hi, everybody. I'm Dr. Kristen Donnelly, one of the good doctors of Abbey Research, and you are incredibly welcome to this video, which is entitled, conveniently, Welcome to My World. Abbey Research is passionate about the idea that through curiosity and listening, we can all be more empathetic and inclusive humans. And this series is in service to that idea. I get to talk to fascinating and wise people all over the world from all walks of life. You get to eavesdrop, and we all get to learn something about somebody we didn't know before. And if we take that seriously and we allow their worldview to integrate with ours, even just for a minute, we'll move through the world a little bit differently. And then as we do that, the world will change. And isn't that what we all want anyway? So today I am joined by pulling her bio over to my eyesight. I am joined by Melanie Wilson, who is a coach, but I'll tell you that feels like a really small word for what she is. She talks a lot about really empowering women specifically, or people, no, I see women, to just kind of get it done. And I think we all need folks like that in her life. The bio reads through her talks, lives, podcast interviews, and programs. She's giving women doable action steps with tools to ignite sustainable change so that they can break free from anxiety and all of its creepy friends to flourish both professionally and personally. She is a truth talker and bullshit caller, which I definitely always need those folks in my life. So Melanie, thank you so much for joining me.
Happy to be here. Happy to be here. It's exciting to have these kinds of conversations. And I love when they're just two girlfriends talking, because I think that's when really beautiful stuff is shared. So honored to be here.
I completely agree. I'm fascinated by, whenever I meet somebody who's a coach, I love learning why. Why is their thing, especially because there's a lot of naysayers out there are like, coaching's completely saturated. We don't need any more coaches. It's like the way we talked about lawyers a couple of years ago. And so I love hearing why. So would you mind sharing with us your why?
Yeah, absolutely. I will tell you that it is an ongoing struggle right now to uphold the integrity of the coaching industry, because so many people are throwing around that term.
Yeah.
But you know what? Honestly, I do what I do because of really deeply rooted, solid why. And I don't really worry about those naysayers, like you mentioned. So I think when you find coaches who are really good at what they do, it's because they've been there. They have real life experience, that they were not okay with where they were. They were not okay with the answers and direction they were receiving. For me, there was a huge void. And we go to work to figure it out. And when we figure it out and see that it works, it would be a huge disservice to not then step into a space to provide that for somebody else. So you asked me about my why, and I always get goosebumps when I talk, and very rarely do I cry now. So that just shows how far along I am in my own healing and recovering. But I suffered for a lot of years with anxiety and depression. Never really understood what it was I was feeling, didn't know how to describe it, put a name to it. And I kind of existed through my life with anxiety and depression. There was a lot of darkness, a lot of struggle, and I never spoke up for myself. I never understood, one, that I could have boundaries, let alone put them into practice to protect my peace, to protect myself. And, in addition to that, I had back problems. So I was being prescribed a plethora of antidepressants, Xanax, and opioids. And with anxiety and depression, I think what happens oftentimes is we don't ever want to be still long enough to actually acknowledge what we're feeling and then talk about and process it. So you add in the sexual assault that happened later on, both in high school when I was raped by two men, and then also being sexually assaulted by a physician my senior year of high school. When you add all of that on top, all of a sudden opioids become a way to really numb. And I just didn't have to feel what I knew I needed to feel, but not knowing it in that moment.
Yeah.
So, my story goes really deep, really far, a lot of darkness. I do have two girls. I'm happily married now. We just celebrated 26 years.
Yay.
Yes. And let me tell you, it wasn't easy. Our marriage suffered because when you come together into a relationship, both of you, I don't know if can I cuss on this?
Sure.
Okay. I only say shit. That's my cuss word. But when you come into a marriage, a relationship, like you both have your own shit that you're lugging with you. And then you come together and all of a sudden you're trying to figure out how to be together with this shit. And then all of a sudden you create more shit. And all of that shit really piled up and it was hard. Our marriage was hard. And my husband had a lot of anger that had nothing to do with me, but he didn't know where to put it, how to process it. So it was projected onto me wanting to serve and please and just take care of him with all the codependent tendencies and the enmeshment. It was a recipe for disaster. So again, opioids helped. When he got loud, if I took a handful of pills, it wasn't as loud. It would go inside my head and ricochet, but it wasn't as loud or as long. And, it got to a point where the opioids were a problem, which I had no idea. My family did an intervention, which I absolutely did not need. I don't know what they're talking about. Hello, denial. And I was able to manipulate my way out of a fantastic rehab within 5 days to come back home. And my husband, wanting our marriage to work, showed up, drove 3 hours to get me and brought me back home. And I was not ready. I was an emotional mess. Now I don't have any pills to take. So now I have to sit in my shit and feel it and just trembling with fear and panic attacks. And, sometimes I couldn't even walk down the steps. Like he literally would have to carry me. It was so bad. And eventually what happened, I also had an eating disorder. And one of the things that I could control was what I ate or didn't eat. And exercising excessively was a way for me to appear okay. Because if you are smiling and you look fit, nobody digs, nobody probes. They just assume. So I ended up blowing out my elbow and had to have surgery. And of course, coming out of, the opioid addiction, not really being in recovery, just no longer having access to the drugs, I was prescribed Dilaudid and things got really ugly one
Really
Sunday.
quickly. Yeah.
Yeah. And I looked over and I had a bottle of Dilaudid on my nightstand. And I was like, I can fix this. I can fix this in a way that I released everyone from responsibility, from guilt, from shame, from having to worry about me. And I took the bottle. There were 40 pills in there and I took the bottle. Fortunately, because of my opioid addiction, the 40 pills did not have the impact on me that they could have. I was later told that I took enough Dilaudid that it could have killed a 600-pound man. And at that point, I was like 110 pounds. So never even fell asleep. But that was God saying, you know what, nice try. Nice try. We've got bigger plans. You have a purpose. And even all this that you've gone through, we're going to use it for purpose. So fast forward, going through therapy, I'm sitting there talking and I kept asking, okay, what can I do between now and our next session? Oh, well, we'll come back and see how you're doing. And that went on. And I'm like, this isn't enough. I want to heal. Like I want to take action. I want to take ownership and responsibility and I want to do something. And that's how my process evolved. I needed it. It wasn't there. So I developed it. It worked for me. It still works for me. And now I get to share that with other women. And it's my responsibility to share my story. It's my responsibility to share what worked and what didn't work. And as a result, other women are able to break free too. So my why is deeply rooted in pain and triumph, in struggle and overcoming, in living in a darkness and then being in that pit and coming out standing boldly and courageously in whose I am and being able to say, you know what, I'm choosing me. I'm going to do what I've been called to do. This doesn't own me. This doesn't define me. And I'm going to move forward. And from this day forward, I'm going to make sure that every woman out there knows I see you, I hear you, I know you. I will meet you as you are, where you are. We'll get you to the other side. And on the other side of your circumstance is this kind of freedom, abundance, and blessing. So my why drives me, girl, it drives me. And when one woman comments on a reel or an Instagram, like, hey, I'm having a tough time and I saw this method, thank you. Like, it was timely. And I'm like, okay, there's confirmation to keep going, because sometimes it sucks. It's hard, but there's constant signs that I am postured to acknowledge, to see that I just need to keep going. So yeah.
Oh my gosh, thank you for sharing all of that. There are so many threads we could chase forever. I was struck as you were talking by two things. One is that a huge part of therapy, in my experience and in my training, so I'm a trained social worker, and in my training, is helping people sit and be quiet with their feelings. And then once they can feel their feelings, then we can help them do something with those feelings. And then we help them put those feelings into perspective. And that is wonderful and a huge part of a lot of people's healing. But then there's a lot of other folks that are like, yes, and I now feel my feelings and I have things in perspective and I still have all of this other, and I got to do something. I got to do something with my body. I got to do something with my soul. I got to do something. And so it's one of those things that to me, I was like, okay, this is a great example of a both and. Like, this is a great example of, this is like, your method isn't going to work for everybody. My method isn't going to work for everybody, but this is another piece of the puzzle for the healing of humanity. And I love that it started from a place of, you just got to feel your feelings.
Yeah.
You've got to feel your feelings, because if you don't feel them, you can't do anything with them.
That's right.
And it's so fundamental to humanity to have to learn how to feel our feelings. And I think back to how we teach children constantly to stuff them down.
Yes.
And we teach children to constantly behave. And there's a way to feel your feelings and not act them out. That we all have to relearn in adulthood. Well, why can't we teach that all along?
I know. Girl, I say often, like, if I could go back and redesign education, the two key courses that absolutely need to be offered is mental health. What is it? How do you take care of it? How do you talk about your feelings? Like, mental health and finances. Like, kids don't know how to feel their feelings and express them appropriately, and they don't know how to balance a checkbook, invest, choose to spend wisely. Like, those are two key areas that we are falling short. And I am just hopeful that at some point there is a significant shift and mental health becomes something that's proactive early on. So we don't get to, situations like this where all those years I didn't know, and here I am suffering. And if someone had taught me early on that you can say no, would I have experienced that? I don't know.
Yeah, we can all play the what if game in our own lives, but I also love what you said, where it's like, I love that you use the word posture, because it's the word I use a lot. And I feel like I try to have a disciplined posture of service. Absolutely. And that's like one of the things that my story has led me to do. And so I had a really wise mentor once. I quote her all the time on this channel. Her name's Gaynor Yancey. And she always taught me to pay attention to the stories that our lives were telling us and that the lives of other people were telling us. And so what I adore about your story is that you paid attention to what your life was telling you. Yeah. And then you reacted in service. And that's really what powers you. Like, I can feel the deep need to get out of bed every single day so that someone else's life isn't yours. Yeah. And that's such a, like, no one's going to shake that why. Like, you may have to change the how, you may have to adjust things, but no one's going to shake that why, because it is the core of your calling. Yeah. And I love that so much.
Yeah. Yeah. It's powerful. And I think if more people can embrace that truth, and on Clubhouse today in my room, we were talking about running a business with anxiety and depression. Mm-hmm. And for me, like, I hid all of this for so long, and it was destroying me. but it was also destroying my business. And then in August of 2016, I opened my home, and this was after, the intervention and going away to rehab and manipulating my way out of that, and then the failed suicide attempt. This is a point where I'm like, you know what? At this point, I've got to show up somewhere as my authentic, unfiltered self and see what happens. Because the what if it doesn't work, blah, blah, blah. But what if it does?
Yeah.
And in that moment, when I looked up after sharing, and I was gazing around, but looking through the women, not actually at the women.
Okay.
When I came up from telling my story and looking at them, what I saw was hope. What I saw was compassion. What I saw was connection, and like this exhale, like, oh my gosh, she gets it. So that was a pivotal moment for me where my anxiety, my depression, my trauma, all of this stuff that I had experienced now became like a secret sauce. It
Yeah.
now propels me to do what I do with that deeply rooted why.
Yeah, because one of the lies that we're constantly told is that we're the only ones who feel this way.
Yep.
And that we're supposed to be doing it alone. And so that holiness of saying, no, not only do I see you, but I've walked this path before. I know that tree. Here's where we take the rest. Like I've got you, is not a weakness, like for someone to need that. It's just the human condition.
Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah.
So what would you say is, I know how I would answer this question, but what do you think is the biggest block besides money to someone working with you? Like what mindset block is their biggest one, do you think?
I would tell you, like, money doesn't come up anywhere near as often as you would think. It usually is a mindset.
Yeah.
It is a lie that they are so conditioned to believe that even though hope is right there, possibility is right there, that lie is just so powerful. It's got a white knuckle grip on their head and their heart that they can't step out.
Yeah.
So it takes time to work through that. And like you said, my process isn't for everyone. So not every client that applies to work with me gets to work with me because I guarantee results. And I want the women coming through to have the breakdowns and the breakthroughs. So if the mindset is something we can work through to get them to the point where they say, you know what, I'm ready. It's a hell yes, I'm ready. Okay, let's engage. But if it's not, I don't cut you off. I'm still pouring into you. I'm reaching out to you. I'm connecting with you. Like I want to stay there with you because the truth is you are not alone. I do see you. I do know you. I do hear you. Where you are is temporary. And at some point, like me, you're going to be at a pivotal moment in your life where you get to choose. Do you go down the same path where it's destroying you? And for me, it almost ended in my life no longer existing, or you can choose to, like, you know what, let's peel back the layers. Let's be vulnerable. Let's unfilter. Let's be authentic. Let's share the shit, invite somebody in, and let's start doing something about it. So mindset is a huge thing. And it's usually that lie that just has that white knuckle grip. And together we work through it. And I think what elevates my practice is my ability to share my personal story.
Yeah.
And I tell them there's probably nothing you're going to share with me that I either haven't experienced myself or worked with a client who has experienced it. So let's just put that out there right now, that this is a safe place and you are going to be okay. I know.
What I was thinking is that one of the core reasons why somebody would be afraid would be some sort of sense of shame. Like that shame is one of the big limiters in all of our lives.
Yeah.
However we feel it. And so by your radical vulnerability, it does not allow shame to have the excuse that it normally has.
Right.
And it can provide bridges into new. I think my mantra recently has been, if we want to be new people, we have to do new things. And if you're tired of who you are, like you have to do something new. You have to try something else. If you're tired of what your business looks like, you got to change something. And that's, but the grip, that mindset, especially in shame is just, man, it's so toxic.
It is.
I can see that being one of the things that is both holding folks back, but also one of the things that you can bust
absolutely
quickly because of how you conduct your person.
Yeah. When you said radical vulnerability, I was like, wow, like I want to receive that. I want to hold on to that for a few minutes and just wow, because sometimes I lose sight of how vulnerable I allow myself to be. And to have someone say like, hey, your radical vulnerability, it's like, wow, I want to receive that. Like, that's a beautiful compliment. And I'm just so grateful that that was on your tongue and you spoke it and I'm receiving it. And that's incredibly powerful. But to speak to your point about shame, shame is an example of darkness. Where there is light, darkness has to recede. It can't exist. So when the shame is what has that white knuckle grip on them, keeping them stuck, and I am being radically vulnerable and sharing truth and showing up in that way, that's light. And as we engage in that conversation, this beautiful exchange of authenticity and just the conversation goes back and forth, I can see them change, like physically change in their posture, and a jaw will unclench and their eyes will soften, and I can see that the shame is losing its grip, and it's because of light. And we all have the potential to do that for someone. Every single human here is a light in someone else's life, whether you know it or not. That is an absolute truth, an absolute truth.
My gosh. And that is the perfect way to end, because that's one of the deep beliefs here at Abby Research as well. So that's perfect. Melanie, this has been a blast. Thank you so much for honoring my viewers with your story, and honoring me with your trust in telling it, and then also for being yourself at all times. So wanted to thank you for all those things.
Thank you. It was an honor to be here, and I'm grateful for women like you who are blazing a trail to create spaces where stories can be told, where they are honored. You were holding space for authenticity and radical vulnerability. I love that, because without women like you doing what you're doing, our stories aren't told, they're not heard, and we miss out on a huge opportunity to impact lives. So thank you for that.
Well, it's my privilege to do it in this way. So if you are like Melanie and I and you love radical vulnerability, please hit thumbs up here on the video. YouTube algorithm really, really likes the thumbs up, I promise. And if you love conversations like this and learning and unlearning, my channel is the place you want to be. Myself and my business partner, the other good doctor, Erin, we have conversations like this all the time with lots of fascinating people and each other. And we'd love to have you subscribe. I want to thank again my guest, Melanie Wilson. The way to get a hold of her is all below in the show notes. And in the meantime, I hope you have a safe life experience soon, where you can be vulnerable with somebody and it is held and respected and cared for. And then I'll see you next time on Welcome to My World. Bye, everybody.
Yeah.